Studios, the ausbiz COB is the key stuff you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Welcome to the COB. I'm Juliette Sarli with you this Wednesday on a day when the market really hasn't done much at all. Of course, we hit those records on Monday. We had a little bit of a dip yesterday, and today we're pretty flat. If we have a look at where the CBO is, only up by about 0.1%. The ASX 200, if I have a quick check at where that is, it is up by about 7 points as we head into match off 7,731 points. Now, of course, when we look at the themes of the day, it was all about the GDP print and the economy growing at a snail's pace, only 0.2% growth in the last quarter of last year for an annual growth rate of 1.5%. This is actually, when you strip out the effects of the pandemic, because of course we know that there was laggard in terms of growth then, it's the slowest growth since the year 2000. So really just putting most people thinking that we are done now for sure with those RBA rate hikes. What was also really interesting was the household to saving income ratio. So that actually rose, and it's not because we're getting wealthier, it's because people are not going out and spending on cafes, restaurants and things because they're just trying to pay the bills. They're trying to pay their mortgages. They're trying to pay higher electricity bills and the like. Speaking of things that we're buying, well, of course, the luxury retailer Cettire, it had a pretty dire day today, slumping quite significantly on an AFR report that the company actually has failed to pay duties to the Australian government. Worth noting, Cettire did come out and say, look, that is actually not true. But nevertheless, certainly the sellers got in on that, and we saw the company fall quite significantly. And the other reason, I guess, we're treading water a little bit in terms of some of the market moves today is that everybody's awaiting Fed Chair Jay Powell speaking in his semi-annual testimony to Congress. So Powell heading to the Hill, and that will very much dominate trade on Wall Street tonight. Just having a quick look into some of the moves in the sectors today, kicking it off with where the tech players were, mostly weaker. Wisetech down by 2.4%, Xero also weaker. Next DC did quite well. Altium and Technology One were lower. There we have some of the other moves in the tech space as well. Gold stocks though, because of course gold is at that 3-month high and actually hit a record along with Bitcoin on the Wall Street session before tracking back. But a lot of the gold players did quite well today. Northern Star up by about 0.1%. Perseus Mining up by about 1.4%. I suddenly got the hiccups, which is not great when you are anchoring. Having a look at the banks as well, we are up by about 1.1% on CBA. Getting back to those records, if in fact that is not already a record, and all the banks looking pretty solid today. Okay, having a look at the key stocks, I mentioned Cettire tumbling following this investigation by the AFR, which revealed that duties charged by the company on goods weren't paid to the federal government. And also Dean Mintz, the founder and CEO, sold down 27.5 million shares, which represent about 7.2% of the company's issued capital. Magellan Financial shares, though, they were rallying today. This after they announced total funds under management increased to $37.2 billion in February. They also recorded net outflows of $200 million during the period. Now, Danny and I were talking about Iress's move yesterday when it absolutely soared, and that was on media speculation US private equity giant Thoma Brava could be making a takeover tilt at the company. But Iress has denied the rumours, saying in a statement to the market it isn't aware of any such information relating to that article. And ANZ shares a little higher. They've agreed to sell a 16.5% stake that they hold in a Malaysian lender through a block trade. Well, let's get more on the GDP print and some of those stocks we're looking at as well, and welcome Harry Watt from Shaw & Partners to the COB. Harry, your thoughts on the GDP print? Because my take certainly from that household income to saving ratio was we're just not going out because we're a little bit worried about what the future holds.
Yeah, good afternoon, Juliette. It's a few moving parts in that GDP number. The number itself was in line, it's sort of been in line with expectations. We did revise last quarter's GDP number up a little bit, so that's some good news that there is still some growth out there coming through, and this economic downturn hasn't been as severe as some had sort of planned and some had sort of been positioned for coming through. But I think there was some risk to the downside in the fourth quarter numbers. We had inventory numbers earlier on this week that were a lot weaker than expected, and that was expected to weigh on this GDP print today, and numbers hadn't quite adjusted for that. So there was some downside there. So I think overall it was really good to see an inline number. Nothing really to see there in the way of new news for the market and being in line with expectations for that GDP number.
All right, let's drill down into some of the stocks and start with what we called dire Cettire. I mean, who do you believe here, the AFR or Cettire saying, hey, no, we have been doing the right thing?
Well, I think Cettire, it's obviously had a shocking session today. I think a lot of that had to do with the CEO and the founder selling down his stake earlier this week as well. So there was a lot of stock out there, a lot of supply of stock. So that meant more buyers and sellers, some sort of bad news coming out from the AFR perspective. That really weighed on shares, probably more so than it would have if that sell down it hadn't happened only a few days ago. I got to say I'm on the side of Cettire here. I think they came out and really honed in on why the AFR piece is incorrect or sort of has some errors in it. The AFR really just relies on one sticker, one label that's come through on some packages they bought saying that those payments hadn't been made. So overall, I think that's really not Cettire's problem. That Cettire aren't, that's not what they do. That's not how they set it up, and they are still paying those taxes and those duties on those goods that are coming through. They did a reasonable job of explaining that side of things in the announcement today. There is still some concern about the ins and outs. They say that they may not take as much duties that they need to in some orders, but they may overcharge in other orders, and it all sort of balances out a little bit. I think we'd like to see a few more numbers around that and how that works. But overall, I don't think they're doing anything wrong. I don't think there's really a great deal to see here, and I'm surprised the stock didn't rally more after it came out of trading hold around midday on the back of that announcement, on the back of their reply to the AFR.
Well, speaking of founders or CEOs selling down their stock, Data looks like divorce is quite expensive, according to the founder selling $90.47 million worth of stock after his divorce.
Yeah, that's a good chunk of stock to part with in a divorce there. Interesting way to do it. I think we've seen a number of founders get divorced in the past. It's not new and not Data specific, but Data, how he's handled this situation is taking that stock out, selling it down, and handing over the cash, which I think is an interesting way to do it. We've seen in the past a lot of founders have to split their stock, ex-wives and ex-husbands, then go and just hose the stock in market, and that becomes a more longer term pressure on the share price. So I think this is a really interesting way to do it. I think they've made the right call by just drawing a line in the sand, saying, here we go, here's the price, you're out of it, we're giving you the cash. So I think that's a good way to handle the outcome, although it's really put some pressure on those shares today. But moving forward, I think it does provide a little bit more liquidity for the market. It may also help them get into more indices and be a little bit more liquidity, see a little bit more liquidity in that respect as well. But overall, not a great day for it today, but I think that'll recover as that stock washes through the market.
All right. Well, one stock that did have a good day, or one company, I should say, Magellan Financial Group. What did you see there?
Yeah, out with farm update for Magellan this morning. So in February, they had $200 million of outflows across their funds. That's down from 400 in January. So it's still money going out the door. It's really not as bad as previous months. So I think the market was kind of like that. There was a little bit of, it was basically 50-50, whether it was retail money or insto money, about $100 million each from both parts of that fund. But their performance numbers were really good as well. So one thing you can do is have a little look and read through the numbers that they put out. They had $2 billion go out the door, but their fund grew by $900 million. So a little bit of a back of the envelope sort of numbers. That puts that their fund grew by about 3% in the period, just based on performance. So that's a positive move for Magellan. How you resolve outflows is improving performance. And that's one thing that they've had to be focused on. And that's one thing that they look like they executed reasonably well last month. And I think that's a big reason why this stock's up significantly today. It's not so much that the fund outflows are slowing, it's that performance was pretty good for last month there.
All right, we've got it all on the COB. Divorce, funds under management, luxury goods. Harry, thank you so much for your time. Harry Watt there from Shaw and Partners. And of course, the stock of the day today was Cettire.
do a little bit more study about the company. Yeah, we need to sit down with the management, and we certainly, before we say we're going to buy, sell, or hold a company, we certainly need to understand the company dynamic a little bit better.
What we've seen, there's a question there over how sustainable their margins are, with their essentially their revenue model involving customs payments with goods over $1,000. That margin risk, it had margins that were considerably higher than most retailers. If that is unsustainable, then the share price quite rightly will tumble quite dramatically. So this price action is not a surprise.
All right, let's get you caught up on the after close leaders. We've just hit the close. Now, we talked about Magellan there with Harry, so it was the leader on the day, up 7.5%. Star Entertainment, Gold Road, AMP, ALS also had good days today. On the downside, leading the laggards in the large caps was Arcadium Lithium, Iress we touched on as well, down 7.3%. Chalice Mining, Life 360, and Smart Group also coming under pressure. In the small end of town, Aravella Therapeutic up almost 19%, and to the downside in the small end of town, I'm surprised Cettire is not there, but anyway, we've got Paragon Care, Pharmost, Anson Resources, Fluence, and Noble Oak Life. Let's get you caught up on what is happening overnight. It really is all about Jay Powell heading to the Hill, beginning his semi-annual testimony to Congress. We've also got a Bank of Canada policy decision, and also in the US, the Fed's beige book is released, of course, giving an indication of how the economy is faring, and we'll have the ADP employment and JOLTS job data being released as well. Looking ahead to what we can expect tomorrow, we've got a little bit out, including trade balance, always a key one, housing finance for January as well, and of course a raft of companies, a lot of the miners too, going ex-div, including BHP Rio South 32. I do want to let you know as well that it is our annual survey time, and of course that is open until the 13th of March. We'd love it if you could take a couple of minutes and fill it out so we can make ausbiz better for you. To sweeten the deal, someone is going to win a managed investment portfolio from MPC Markets worth $5,000. There are other prizes too. Just go to ausbiz.co/survey24. And I guess we better check where the market closed up as well. I jumped the gun there, but we are up just 7 points on the ASX 200, 7,730. The CBO there is only up by about 0.1%. And I'll just give you an update or pulse read on the sectors. It really was those tech stocks that lagged today, along with consumer staples and materials. Elsewhere, financials, utilities, energy, industrials all looked pretty good. Magellan Financial, of course, the best performing stock. And the index up about 1% over the last 5 days. So we will not say no to that kind of return over 5 days. All right, that does it for today. We'll be back tomorrow with all of the wrap up from Wall Street and Jay Powell's testimony, and of course a big busy day here with interviews as well. And remember, you can catch up on all of today's interviews as well by going to our website, ausbiz.com.au. Have a great evening.